I'm Rob from Cypherglass, and I recently had the pleasure of sitting down with the Hello EOS team to ask them the questions that you submitted. You submitted very thoughtful questions, and we got a lot of great answers that should hopefully start to bridge the gap between the East and the West in EOS. Now, of course, most of us don't know what's happening in China because we don't speak Chinese, and vice versa. I learned in this interview, most of the people in China have no idea what's happening in the West because they simply don't speak English. This interview was eye-opening in a number of ways, and I hope you'll get a lot of value out of it. It's just the first of a new series we're doing to try to bridge the gap between the East and the West communities inside EOS. Ultimately, we all have the same goals and just want a stronger, better, more scalable EOS mainnet. So I hope that through this interview series, you'll not only be able to find out more about what's actually happening in the East, but to all of the Eastern viewers who are watching with the translated subtitles, I hope you'll be able to find out over time more about what we are doing in the West as well. So without further ado, here it is, the Hello EOS Cypherglass AMA. Enjoy. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We're all super excited to hear what you have to say. But before we get started and dive into all the Twitter questions, could you sort of give us a basic overview of your views on block producers and voting?
Yes, I think before I answer all the questions we collect from Twitter, I need to explain something. The first thing is campaigning is not as that important as we think. I don't think we should pay so much attention about the ranking of BPs. Let's just focus on how to bring more resources to EOS community, build more dApps, and bring more new users. That means a lot. And the second, any decision made by any token holders should be respected. It's not about right or wrong. Second, any decision made by any token holders should be respected. It's not about right or wrong. No matter if they withdraw the tokens from exchanges, no matter the staking or not, no matter they vote or not, and no matter who they vote for, it's reasonable and respectable. Yes, that's my point.
Awesome. That's great. I think that's a pretty good view. So are you ready to dive into the AMA with some of these Twitter questions?
Yeah.
Perfect. Sure. So Mark Woods on Twitter asked, he said, I'd love to hear Chinese block producer thought around geographic centralization of block producers in China now. Are they happy about it? So what do you think of the current situation there?
First of all, I think I want to make this point. It's not just about EOS. It's for the whole blockchain industry. I always think that we think too much about decentralized, which is very simple. I can understand that because every one of us come in this industry because we want to build a decentralized dream. But when we build a blockchain project, the way to be on top is never the making it more decentralized. You know what
Yeah, I
I'm
think I understand what you're saying. So are you saying it's easier to compete if the system is more centralized?
it's more than that. It's more than that. Because as I said in the BP's event in San Francisco, right? The largest design of ASIC chip is in China, right? The top three Bitcoin mining pool is in China. 80% of hash power is in China. It is really, really looks like decentralized. Very much, right?
Yeah.
But with China power, we already make Bitcoin great as it is right now. Bitcoin, I can never see Bitcoin make this far because they are 100% decentralized.
Right. I see what you're saying. So why do you think that is? Do you think that people in China are just more excited about blockchain and more willing to accept it? Is that why there's so much hash power in China and so many block producers in China?
I think China is just good at math.
Hmm.
They are very good at doing the number, making profit. You know, mining, to me, mining is just a game of numbers. It's very easy to evaluate how many money you should you need to
Right.
and how many money you can make, how long you can cover all your costs and make profit.
Right. That makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
very easy.
Right. It really is just a numbers game. So with all of this happening in China, Mark Woods had another question. How can a non-Chinese block producer like us at Cypherglass break into the Chinese market and get more votes from that area?
It's just about communication because I had seen this. A lot of BPs in Western world had already come to China, but almost every meeting of between us is about BP and another BP. Is between Western BP and Chinese BP, right? You
Right.
guys recognize that, right? The problem is this is not enough. Western BPs, maybe they should take more time, communicate with community, with the token holders.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why I prefer to event to meet up because there are a lot of token holders and community members in it.
Right. So also with Mark Wood's questions, he says, and something around, what do you feel is driving most Chinese token holders to vote for the block producers they do? Are the Chinese token holders just not familiar with the work being done by BPs like EOS New York, Greymass, Cypherglass, et cetera? If not, is it just a language barrier or is there something deeper there that's preventing them from voting for those BPs?
That's very simple. They just don't speak English.
Hmm.
It's very easy to understand because Chinese token holders, they know EOS because of us.
Hmm.
They buy and hold EOS with us together. And they survived from the bear market for the past 1 year with us. They made profit because of us.
Hmm.
So very easy to understand that they will vote for us as a return. But unfortunately, for Western BPs, the Chinese token holders, they know nothing
Hmm.
because they just don't speak English. They don't know English at all.
Interesting.
They don't know anything happening in the Western world unless we translate it to them.
Right.
But almost uh, most of us translate only EOS IO or Block One
Hmm.
stuff from them.
Right.
But I think Hello Media can help with that.
Okay.
We can help the Western BPs to speak, to communicate with the Chinese community.
Awesome. That would be great. I think we need something like that to sort of bring everybody together. And I think a lot of the times the Western VPs do forget that not everybody speaks English. So we need to make sure things are in the right language. Well, that's great. So let's then move on to the second question, SFEOS Games. They said, how are you working with other BPs to get 1.8 live? Where does this fit into your priority queue? And so that everybody knows what he's talking about, that's EOSIO 1.8. It's the next version of the software that's required for voice.com to actually launch.
We communicate in Telegram channel and WeChat group. And of course, I think it's top. It's top period P priority.
Right.
And of course, it's top priority. I think it's just as same important as we maintaining the stability of the minute, right? Yes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that's very, very high priority, especially since voice needs it to actually launch. So another question from SFEOS, he says, what is Firecoin? Do you consider Firecoin by Huobi Pool to be a pay for votes campaign?
Yes, this. Even Hobby themselves don't deny it.
Interesting.
But think about this. The users of Hobby, they have made decisions and show them, and the users of Hobby think it's right. Or we can say it's not about right and it's not about right or wrong, right? It's about choice.
Right.
The choose
Interesting.
to stay. And I just respect it.
Okay, interesting. And I think some of that might have to do with the cultural differences also between the West and the East. And we'll talk about that in another question coming up. But he also says, not meaning to be confrontational, but seriously want to know if you've ever been contacted to trade votes from any Eastern BPs or any BPs at all. And then what are your views on vote trading?
Yes, there were, of course.
Interesting.
Yes, but uh, unfortunately, we don't have votes to trade. We're not big whales. So all we can offer is our media, is influence of Hello EOS, or maybe myself. We can help with their products, with their dApps, and that's what we do. That's what we can.
That seems very similar to us at Cypherglass, where we're very focused on media and bringing on more dApps and things like that. So that's great. He also has another question. He says, do you support the Reg Producer 1 referendum? Why or why not?
I think the requirement they list on the proposal is very, very great, because any qualified BPs should do this. And only one question: should simply removed, maybe it's a little rough, I think.
Oh, okay. The process of actually removing a BP.
Yeah, think about this.
Right.
We are all growing. Should we give BP more room to grow, to especially through mistake and making it right? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good answer. So let's go to number 3 then, from Bonds Manifest on Twitter. Thanks, Bonds, for the questions. He said, I would like to know if there is a Chinese version of Everything EOS, and if so, where is it available? And Everything EOS is our podcast show that we do every week. So is there something similar that happens in China?
Yeah. Basically, every BPs in China have their own promotional positions in different ways, where we have been covered everything you need in China, like EOS maintenance work, sign chains, dApps, development, interview, anything you want to know, we have covered it. Yes, but for everything else, the reason is as simple as hell. Just we Chinese don't know English.
Right. And that's a very, very simple answer. It makes a lot of sense. So they continued, they said they'd be curious to hear about the community leaders and visionaries in China. So here in the US, we're familiar with people like Kevin Rose from EOS New York, who very much is this sort of leader within the EOS community, along with countless other people. But we're not getting any exposure to the equivalent from the East. So he wants to know where/who are they? And he would love to hear from you about that.
Let me see. There are Liang from Star EOS, 超级军, which means super Bitcoin in English, from 毕信. Wang Ruixi from 虎符. Maybe Jin Ma from EOS Asia. Most of them are the earliest investors and promoters about Bitcoin and blockchain, and they got very, very close connection with some big whales, some early investors. They are very powerful and got a lot of fans, and all of them are good at writing.
Oh, awesome. That's great. So we have Another question from infinityblock.io who says, what is the biggest meetup your team has held?
Our meetup, Chinese, in China, we have people, right?
Right.
There have been never fewer than 200.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and was in Shenzhen and Zhengzhou. There are more than 500 attendees. We can even find some place to stand.
Oh, wow.
Very, very exciting.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. That's crazy. So he has another question then. He said, how do you convince Ethereum developers, investors, and users to move over to EOS.io?
I think it's very easy because EOS is the most influentially and potentially high performance blockchain project. And what we do is just to state that fact to more people. It's very easy. I think it's not that difficult.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I've noticed that too on different calls that I do. I do free consulting calls with people, and they sort of are shocked to hear just how much better EOS is. It's just a matter of education. So Justin Buck asked, what would they think if Western proxies started voting for only Western BPs in an attempt to keep the top 21 balanced? Would this be fair game or be seen as inflammatory?
As I said before, I think it's reasonable and I respected that. Yeah, we can understand. There is some cultural, some difference about cultural. We Chinese are more than, we Chinese are survivors more than fighters, which means we prefer to continue to do whatever we have been doing for the past 2 years. And I think just peace in mind.
Right. That's great. So he
And
is a.
we can make our efforts more visible to the Western world, and build up a sense of trust day by day, I think.
Right.
Maybe one day we can make you guys feel really sorry about not voting for this guy. We have been doing a very great job.
Absolutely. And I think we need to do a better job also of educating the Eastern community on what we've been doing in the West. So I think we both need to communicate more for sure. So Justin has another question. He says, how much should inflation be in terms of payments for block producers? How many block producers should get paid? And should there be a steep cliff between 21 and 22 inflation, or otherwise, should there be a worker proposal system or something like that? So what are your thoughts on inflation overall right now?
I think we're in a perfect situation right now. I don't think we should change anything about these numbers.
Yeah, I think that the steep cliff is just the difference in pay between 21 and 22.
I think it's a very genius design of it, because it can make the VPs more positive and active. No one can stop doing their job or even slow things down because they will fall. Because other PPs want to be top.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, very smart.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes a lot of sense. It keeps everybody in competition. So with the 4% inflation, what do you think should be done with that? Should that be burned or kept?
Burned. I think just
Okay.
burned. Um, as long as we have Block One and Daniel doing their job, I don't think we should start the WPS.
Hmm.
It's a lot of stress to token holders. And Pictures is a very good example for this. It doesn't work very well.
Continuing on that question, he wants to know the viability of a 3-second lib time on Boss.
They are doing a very great job on the improvement of performance of network. Yes, but there is always a but. Um, I think the key point to make a breakthrough is not just performance. Because when we turn to the application, the users cannot feel it. They can feel no difference about it.
Right.
So I think they may be, they, what I suggest is bring more exchanges, bring more dApps team be in the game.
Right. That makes sense. So he also wants to know, what are your thoughts on voice.com and KYC on the mainnet?
I like it. I like it. And I think it's gonna be a killer app. I will be the early birds, 200%.
Yeah.
And I feel, I think it's okay about QIC.
Hmm.
I did it. I have done QIC in exchanges because I need to exchange.
Right.
So I will do that again because I want to show myself on voice.
That's great. He has
And
another question. He says, a lot of Western block producers have gone on tours of the East and China and these other regions. Were these meetings helpful? Would it be valuable if those in the East came on more tours in the West? Would the network be more secure with more global diversity within the top 21, or does this really matter?
it's every time matters. Every time we communicate with each other matters. And all of this matter can add up to a change, right? Every time we can know us better, we can cooperate more closer. And I know I have been this, I have been always in it. I know that it's very difficult. It's tough for us, but we have to do this.
Right. So his last question, he has a lot here. He says, what are your thoughts on a standard being developed for how custodial voting can be done? So voting on exchanges, how much say should the true token holder have in how their tokens are voted?
You know nothing
Hmm.
unless you vote with your own key.
Interesting. So you think
Yeah,
users should withdraw and then vote?
yeah. If you want to know, if you want to make sure the votes come to the right person.
Right. That makes sense. So the moving on, Aloha EOS says, what are your thoughts on the transition from the original EOS constitution to the EOS user agreement or EUA? And what do you see for base layer governance going forward?
I think EUA means that the top 21 BPs can take in charge. That means we got more responsibility and more duty. That's that's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think each of those BPs definitely needs to participate more in the overall process.
Yeah.
So BitMike or Tom Osmond says, how is the issue of the EOS blockchain size being handled? Keeping a full ledger is very important for blockchain security and should be a priority for BPs.
Of course, all of us keep a full ledger. That's for sure, for 100%. So don't worry about it. And think about this: how much data that the cloud service have stored.
Right. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So there, there is no need to worry.
Right. He also
Relax.
says, yeah, I agree. He also says, what has been the most challenging part of becoming a block producer, and how do you see this changing as EOS grows in popularity?
The most challenging part for us is try to get more votes from the Western world. Uh, you know, because you guys already think there are too many Chinese BPs already. It's very difficult.
Right. I think we have that's probably our biggest challenge as well, is getting votes from the East. So I can relate. Magic Hour asks,
No, no,
oh,
no,
go ahead.
no, no, no. The Eastern world never think there are too many piece of West,
Right.
but
I think it's for a different reason. Like we struggle to get the votes because of a language barrier and a communication gap, as opposed to too many.
the East world don't vote because they don't know.
Hmm.
But um, the challenge is maybe some Western token holders don't vote for us just because they think there are too many of Chinese.
Right.
Yeah, that's a little tough for us.
That makes sense. So Magic Hour on Twitter asks, what do you think will happen to scatter once WebAuthn is implemented?
Just from a view of users, I think it's more security and convenient. Yeah, that's all.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it'll just make all of the existing wallets better.
Yeah.
So Kitesurf University says, would it be better to make a kind of an overview site in which everybody can see who did what for the EOS ecosystem? So for example, everybody could see what every block producer in the top 21 has done and is working on. And maybe also we could see block producers with potential earlier and then vote for them.
Yeah, of course. I think it's an amazing idea. It's BPs have every reason to do so, because it's their duty to make more voters know themselves.
Right.
Maybe we can start a channel on like EOS Go.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Maybe
Awesome.
we can talk about this with them, right?
Definitely, yeah. So Jared Moore asks, what makes a good blog producer and what are your personal reasons for wanting to be a blog producer rather than focusing on other projects?
The first, I think, is passion, because we need attract new users. We need express. And the second, I think, is persistence. It's a long, long way to go. Some other capability, maybe like promotion, develop, or persuading. Yeah.
Right.
And for myself, I interest blockchain industry because of DPoS, because of my master, because I believe in it. I don't believe in POW.
Interesting.
And we were the earliest block producer of DPoS when B-shares.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's just my destiny.
Nice. I like that. So Koner Moshier asks, what are your thoughts on crypto regulatory uncertainty in the United States? What does the future hold in that regard? And do you believe that that uncertainty affects BP votes? And then the last, how would you go about regulation regarding crypto?
I think that's a lost thing I worried. I mean, I never care about that. Because a technical revolution, because I think a technical revolution can never be stopped by government. With technical evolution, change things, not the otherwise. Trust me, even if the US government ban the whole blockchain world, even China ban the whole blockchain world, we still can find some way to buy and hold.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. Pramod Nautiyal says, what are your views on one EOS, one vote? So one token, one vote, as opposed to the one token, 30 votes that we have today. How do you think this will benefit or harm the EOS ecosystem?
I don't think we should change to one token, one vote. There are some other blockchain projects with DPoS and with one vote, one token. Sorry.
Right.
I don't think we should be that way. There are many DPoS projects with one token, one vote, and like EOS, all the BPs, they are 100% competing. They are fighting each other. But in EOS, we cooperate. You know, none of us can do everything. We cannot do all the things EOS need, right?
Right.
We need to cooperate. Everyone has something they are very good at, and everyone had something cannot do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that was one of the biggest concerns that's been voiced recently, is that they're worried that all the BPs would just fight basically instead of cooperating on different projects. So that makes a lot of sense.
Trump,
Tanish,
you
yeah,
can
go ahead.
look at Trump.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Trump is one token, one vote.
Right.
Look at look at them.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
So we're coming up on our last question here. He has a two-part question. So the first part from Tanish Verma on Twitter: how does Asian ideology of trading votes different than the Western counterparts?
As I said earlier, they have made their decision, and I respect that, and I understand it.
Awesome. That makes sense. And the final question: how could we bridge the gap between the Chinese representatives and Western ones? Very few Western VPs have hired the Chinese representatives to sort of fill the void. Could we see the same steps followed by the East?
Yeah, almost every VPs in China had at least one who can speak English very good. And I think I suggest the Western VPs can do the same, because a lot of token holders is in China, and they don't know a word from English.
Right.
They just don't speak English.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's what is it, Occam's razor, that says generally the simplest answer is the correct answer. And I think that's it. I mean, very simply, that's why. It's because they just don't speak English, and we, don't speak Chinese. That's great. So yeah, go ahead.
And another point is, it's our job to make more holders know of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, it's our job. It's not their job to know us.
A huge thank you to Hello EOS for taking the time out of their schedule to do this very important interview. We'll have more of these AMA styles coming up with other Eastern block producers, and I cannot wait to see what other information we uncover. There is so much good, so much value being added from both Western BPs and Eastern BPs, and I hope that this series will continue to show that to everyone involved. Until next time, I'm Rob from Cypherglass, and remember, go EOS!